Thank you, Daniela. So proud to have you as also another female trailblazer. Not for nothing. Okay, I also can't follow Artis or Petter or Eric, so you just have me, guys, but I do have this great panel, and we're going to talk about integration. So I wanted to start with getting everybody's blood moving a little bit, so I'll expect you to raise a hand. So what kind of support would help you make better integration decisions? This is a multiple choice question, friends, so think this one through. You're going to raise your hand. Case studies and real campus stories, templates, checklists, and frameworks, vendor comparison tools, or peer-to-peer network for solving any problems that you have on campus. So raise your hand if case studies makes your integration lives easier. Not a fan favorite. Templates, checklists, and frameworks. I know my audience, guys. Vendor comparison tools. That's what I thought. And then peer-to-peer network solving. Peer-peer, woohoo. Awesome. So at the very last slide, you will see a QR code that will take you to a checklist and a framework for any integration problems you might be trying to solve on campus. So, hey, I knew what you guys would want. So first, guys, I'm going to start off with a tricky question. Can you each share a memorable integration gone wrong moment? Because I think it's better to start with the ones that went wrong than the ones that went right. And what did you learn from it?
If I have to pick one, there have been so many in my time in higher ed. So I don't write code. I'm not that person. I'm sort of a project manager, and I've been a subject matter expert in a lot of things and a few other things. But the biggest go-wrong was I implemented DegreeWorks at 12 schools with my system-level peers. Hey, John Young. And at some point in time, I decided it was important for me to modify the non-coder, the config file that used to live behind DegreeWorks, those of you who, DegreeWorks is an audit system. And so I put it in my internal environment, and after the extract that night, I asked the DBA if it was okay, and he said, yeah, it did great. So I put it in 10 out of the 12 institution production environments, and their error logs filled up so quickly that they ran out of table space and all kinds of bad things. And so what I learned from that is I am not a coder. Don't ever touch a config file, ever, between Banner and DegreeWorks. And then I also learned, don't trust a DBA. He slid that file, he slid the old one back in my internal environment, just so I would not know that I had really screwed up. But he didn't know I was going to do what I did. So that's my story.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'll share a story from, not from Durham Tech, but the past institution I was at, which was a private 4-year institution, who will go nameless, in Scranton, Pennsylvania. But we were a Banner school, and I was the chief information officer there, so my perspective may be a little different than yours, but I do want to let you know we used another CRM for many years. And continue to use that CRM there. But I do want to let you know that after 6 or 7 years, the school decided they wanted to use more of the CRM for the student journey, which meant that they wanted to have a stronger connection between the CRM and Banner. And the CRM was implemented without any IT support way before I got there. So what I learned from that was, we really had to call on our relationships across the university, and also did a lot of backtracking for IT to get schooled on how the CRM worked and what could be done, because we ended up doing a lot of the programming for that next stage. So I can't stress the relationship building, especially with all the stakeholders and cross-functional teams. That's what I learned.
Oh, absolutely. Relationship building can often make a big mess, a little bit less of a mess, as long as you can manage that relationship appropriately. I know one of the first integrations I was involved in as a consultant, someone had done an import. It wasn't me, luckily, and it caused every colleague look up to take 7 minutes to run. And when you're on a campus and they're just trying to bring up a person, nobody wants to wait that long. So that's when I learned about the value of database indexing, friends. So, okay. So how about, let's go on the flip side. What's one integration project that you're proud of, and why did it succeed?
Great. I will share with you a recent one from Durham Technical Community College. We migrated from Sakai, that's an LMS. For those of you who don't know, it's in the distant past, to Canvas.
A little older one.
Yeah, to Canvas, and the integration with Elusi and colleague went very well. And I have to say, I think it was because there was project planning done. I also want to say that a number of stakeholders, including all our faculty, were involved in that decision. And it was piloted at a slower time of year in the summer, and that went extremely well. So that was a very successful story.
Well, some of you in the room know in the state of Georgia, we have an abundance of laws and policy and rules and regulations. So I'm most proud of our recent Element 451 integration across 7 institutions, with ABAC being our bonus, and getting all of that done. I would say, first of all, I'm really proud because most of the campuses were not technically up to speed with the Ethos ecosystem, and now they are. But we had to really do a lot of hard work on mapping because of our data collections. We had to do customization. We had to build an extension in Ethos. And I will say, it was a success. It didn't feel like a success at times, but it was a success because we hit 80%, and in IT, that's the magic number, 80%. So I do want to say also that I'm kind of a box checker, right? And I can be a wee bit pushy, right? Okay,
Never.
USG people, don't
Never.
speak up. Shh, be quiet. Anyway, I think there were times when I just peppered the folks at Element with questions and drove home, check the box. I think our spreadsheet was probably, if you printed it, about 40 pages that we had to go through
At least.
get everything into Ethos and over to Banner. I think I drove Kelly to drink a lot of brandy, probably.
Whiskey.
Whiskey. But, you know, with patience, perseverance, and I would say in some respects, team grit. It took a lot of grit from the Element team, the USG campuses, and also my team and project management. But that special Georgia peach flavor is up and running. So that was I'm most proud of that Element implementation.
And I can say that I know so much more now about all the Georgia laws.
And that is great.
Yeah. I checked that box. So what do you think, shifting in, what do you wish more stakeholders understood about the complexity behind integrating systems like CRMs, SISs, AI agents, all the above?
Well, first of all, perfection is not the goal.
No.
That is not the goal. Progress is the goal. And anytime you're working towards complexity with an integration, you have to be willing to make progress and not go to perfection. I have seen so many institutions in my career, and you know, an integration's not a Lego set. You're not going to be able to put them together and then have a perfect Harry Potter replica. It's going to be messy, it's going to be inconsistent. And the other thing is, you know, it's a win when you hit 80%. It is. It's a win because you have 20% left to fix, and that's actually easy to do because everybody comes together for that last bit. And I think from a stakeholder perspective, a lot of projects get stalled because of that perfection state of mind. And you just can't have that when you're doing a complex integration. You have to be willing to take 80%.
Thanks, Lynn. I have two things. I think one, and this is very high level, but I think it's important for you to understand, and also your leadership and your sponsors. And an integration is a change management process that will probably require you to change some of your processes. That is, if you know your processes. And I would tell you, many of you as functional leads, whatever area you're in, whether it's student services or marketing, have a job to do in addition to this. So it's difficult, and I'll say this about IT people also, because they don't know the processes and they don't know the data either. So I think that's important to realize. There's going to have to be modifications. The other thing I will share with you is that an integration is not going to clean up your data integrity. If you have bad data in your ERP, your bad data is going to go to your CRM and some of your other systems. So you really need to think about that. I know some of us don't always have a process in place to do that on a regular basis because that involves a number of people, maybe your IR people too. But it's important to remember it's garbage in is garbage out.
And I think that's such a good point because there is no easy button to integrations. There's a before state, there's an after state, and there's all of that work in between to make sure that you can get there. And as a certified change management professional, it's important that everybody understands what you're trying to get to at the end too. So, Lynn, it's funny that you're starting with this one. How do you handle governance and data ownership when integrations span multiple departments, as they did in Susan's example?
Oh, that is my question, isn't it? With snacks, that's how you handle it. You have snacks, and you offer up your specialty, which is a pound cake. The USG is a governing body. I work for the governing body, the Board of Regents. We have oversight over 26 institutions, some really big names: Georgia Tech, the University of Georgia, Atlanta Metropolitan State College, Georgia Gwinnett College. I'm calling out people. I see ABAC. And it is often painful when you have to be the bad cop in the room and you have to say, I can see that you're frustrated. How can I help you operationalize this? And that happened a lot during this project. And, I think one of the other things is we have a board, the Board of Regents. And so some of our data collection is driven by that. And that's challenging because we're collecting data in our CRM and throwing it over into Banner, and it's got to be perfect because it's going to be collected, mashed, aggregated, and reported out to the state because we're a state agency. The other thing I would say is there's this endless loop between governance and decision authority and integrations. And it's really hard when you're the decision authority and you make a mistake. I made several mistakes in this integration because of that spreadsheet that is so long. We mapped a field. I gave the directive to map something to an incorrect field in a custom table that we have in Georgia in Banner. I won't mention who found it. Gordon State, yeah, thank you, Gordon College. But so we've got to correct that, and now it's wrong in everybody's instance of Banner, so it's got to be fixed. And then we had another customization where we mapped. I can't even remember so many things. And I don't know if any of y'all have tuition classification, where you have to decide if they're going to be in-state, out-of-state. Well, we have a new one, out-of-country. So we had to get Element to literally write code to handle our tuition classification. And that has been the biggest governance, I would not call it a hurdle, opportunity. And that's been our I think our campus's pain point too. But luckily, I had a bucket full of managed services credits to get us over there.
So speaking as a senior 20 years plus chief information officer, do not throw anything at me, but I will tell you the source of truth is your ERP. Governance, no governance. but there's ways to try to deliver that, negotiate that, and have that conversation with all the functional leads and all the other systems that you need to tie to. So this has been my experience at Durham Tech, which was fairly easy. But I would tell you at other universities or larger colleges, unlike Georgia, even though I think the system of North Carolina is a little bit different, their data management is kind of loose for the individual schools, so we do a lot of customization. But I would tell you, it's important to know where your source of truth is, and for most of it is the ERP, because you have all that reporting that needs to go out to the state, to the federal government, and things like that. But that's something I think as a chief information officer, as you work with your different stakeholders, you have to explain why and how that works. That doesn't mean you don't have data in your other systems. It doesn't mean that their data is not valid. I think we always just need to remember how that data goes in and out, just to make sure it's the same data, especially for our students.
Absolutely, and I would add on to that too, that it's not a one and done process. Data governance and ownership, that's something that you have to repeat. Just like if you've ever been on a call with me, you've heard that a CRM is a garden that needs tending. So is your data governance process. So making sure that you have key stakeholders engaged across the entire campus and have data owners selected to make sure that, because to Susan's point earlier, IT often houses that data. It doesn't mean that they own it. And how have you navigated competing priorities within two systems? It's just the perfect segue, where everyone thinks that they're the source of truth.
Oh, my goodness. Diplomacy. There's always a standoff, right?
And pound
in
cake.
This. Yes. Yes. Always coffee, always food, always snacks, especially cake, any kind of cake. You can just give me the cake. I would say our SIS is our truth for 99% of our data. There's probably 1% from other systems, CRMs, learning management systems, other things like Visual Zen for orientation. Yes, DegreeWorks, other things, but our source of truth is the SIS. And I think one of the other things I will do to navigate all those competing priorities is retire. Yeah, I'm going to do that for sure. 526 days, a year, 5 months, and some change. But anyway, I think in our state, the law is our source of truth. And we have one boss, and that is our General Assembly, our governor, and our Board of Regents. That's how Georgia works. And so when we think about that source of truth, we have to line up with all of those entities. And so I think when you throw in some policy, some politics, and then Georgia pride, you know, we have like a stew of data that we have to make sure is truth. So.
Agreed, Lynn. There is something about the South. I'm actually from New Jersey, so new to the South. But I would say, in answer to your question, navigating priorities, again, I believe it's really about relationships, and it's about compromise. Especially for those of you working with your IT areas, maybe for the first time. I think there's so much value in you being engaged and explaining, and I would say the same for our IT folks, really trying to explain, which they've not probably have done before. So let me just tell you. And so you really do need an articulate leader who can speak non-tech.
Yes.
But I think it's about engagement. It's really about understanding the why.
Absolutely. And the relationship part is so key. I know I've been in higher ed it's my 2-decade anniversary this year. And in my first interactions with functional users, they were so used to hearing the word no from IT. And so becoming a partner, having a potluck, making a cake, bringing coffee creamer. Coffee creamer opens more doors
Amen.
Than most things. So making sure you're maintaining those relationships too is important. Okay, so we're talking now about strategy and communication. What strategies have worked best for gaining buy-in from leadership or functional areas during complex integration. So when you're bringing multiple groups to the table, how do you make sure that it becomes a priority and everybody's listening in? Because I think Susan said it best earlier, everybody has another job to do too. It's not the only thing on the table.
Well, you want to catch them after a good budget win, right? That's the first thing. And it's like a political campaign, you know, except you don't have yard signs. I do have a lot of swag that could become a yard sign from my campuses. The other thing is you've got to build a coalition and have a champion in the room that can help you convince leadership and the functional folks, because a lot of times it's the functional folks, not leadership, that have to be convinced that this is the right next thing or right step or whatever. And then I would also say there's the need for agility. Because if you go to leadership and they say, yeah, not this year, well, what are you going to do? You got to find another path. So, you know, getting buy-in, in my mind, is all about the relationship and that coalition between champions on campuses. And again, if it's a system-level project, which happens every day, something new every day, then those campus champions and system level champions really, really matter.
I would say, I say the same thing. I'm going to say it again. You know, I was a CIO. I am still a CIO, and I would tell you, for me, IT is about people, not the technology. So I would say communications, a level of transparency. I think we also need to be vulnerable. When we make a mistake, we need to say we made a mistake and try to explain why. I would say that we all need a bit of patience, because most of us, if I could probably say all of us, are running a number of projects in addition to doing your job. That's where higher ed is these days. I talk to people nationally, and my colleagues, they're saying the same thing. There's a lot going on. So I think there needs to be conversations of priority. At Durham Technical Community College, I would tell you our executive sponsor is our president, and that's quite helpful. But the engagement and the leadership is with all of us and all of you at whatever level you're in the organization, and I just think we need to empower people to realize that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And pound cake helps. And I think that vulnerability that you brought up too is important. Lynn mentioned that in that very long spreadsheet, a couple mistakes were made, but owning that, saying that it was a mistake, not trying to hide behind it, having ownership of that is really important. And it gives people the ability then to be more open with you too when they're talking through those things. And then not hiding behind jargon. I think it's really easy in IT to get very jargon heavy, and that can be pretty intimidating to functional stakeholders as well. So how do we frame the value of an integration to non-technical stakeholders? I know that I tend to do that, and don't you have better things to do in your day than typing in 2 places, but.
For sure. And you said jargon, and that's my tagline for this one is skip the jargon, talk real talk, tell a story, use a visual. You know, I'm a visual learner anyway, and so if I need to see how something works, I'm going to want to see a process flow. I'm going to want to see how is this going to impact our business process, and how is this going to make us do things more efficiently. And I think that's what stakeholders honestly want. You know, plumbing is a good metaphor, because if it's working, you don't even think about it, right? You just use it. You turn on the water, you go into the restroom, you take a shower, but if it breaks, then, oh my goodness, please don't come near us, right? But when the plumbing breaks, nothing works. So you have to think of it like that. And I would also say, sometimes there are surprises in those functional areas. People that are power users or who just get it, like automatically they just get it. And I think you really have to lean into those people and let them tell the story to the other stakeholders, because they do that work day in and day out. So I think it's important to tell a story.
I just lost track of what I was going to say. I'll go back to communication. No, I'm only kidding. The value, I think, where we're at as a community college in Durham, North Carolina, the value is our students. It all comes back to that. The services that we're providing to them and how we contribute not only to the students, their families, but the region. I know that sounds very hokey, but that is our mantra, and I think that's why we do what we do, and we have to go back there. It works for us.
That's why I've been hired so long. I think I can see that for everyone up here, that's why we do what we do and work so hard, is for all those students. And if you guys want me to put earmuffs on for this question, I can, but what role does vendor management play in your integration success? How do you manage those relationships with your vendors?
So being in higher ed for over 30 years and being a CIO, how I handle it. I would tell you, and I think you know this, let me just be I'm a very transparent person. A vendor wants to sell you a product, okay? What I think we're trying to do here, and what I believe Element is trying to do, is change the way we do work. And as you can see, this is my first Element conference. It's really about your relationships with the vendors. Mm-hmm. It's really a relationship. These are years in the making, especially for all your ERPs. I mean, we work hard, and you have to work at that relationship, and there's compromise. So sometimes we try to get what we want. Sometimes, we need to change and compromise. But goodness knows. And the vendors are always changing. I can't even tell you the number of people that I work with personally that have worked for 5 vendors now that I work with. They've gone from Cisco to Apple to Dell, and now they're in AI type things. Kelly, look at your
I was
trajectory.
Fortunate.
So
yes.
Some of the people I know here that work, I've known them from other companies. So to me, it's about the relationship and the transparency and the communication.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
pound cake.
I agree with everything you said. I did bring a pound cake for the Element folks, so I'm sure they will not share it. Mm-hmm. But so I see it a little bit differently, but similarly. I am a campus advocate. I do not work for the vendor. Mm-hmm. I work for 26 institutions, and I've been lucky with most vendors that they understand that. The campuses are struggling. They're juggling all these priorities. They're bleeding staff. If you haven't had budget cuts or rifts at your institution, count your blessings, because all of ours, except for probably our research universities, have been through some difficult budget times with staff loss. And the other thing is, they're just trying to hold things together with duct tape mm-hmm. and maybe some of those plastic straws on their campuses. And so when the vendor comes in, you have to set expectations early. You have to be firm but fair and be consistent. But you also have to be willing to nut up. Do you know what that means? Nut up in the South. And you can ask anybody, I will nut up on you. It means get pushy.
It's a different phrase in New Jersey.
Well, I was trying to be polite, but holding the vendor accountable is my job. Making sure they meet the timeline, or if I think we're not going to meet the timeline, negotiating a new timeline with the vendor and making sure that they understand we're in it to win it. Mm-hmm. And it's not about the contract for me or for my stakeholders or for my campuses. It's just not. And we've been lucky because I can't think of a single time with Element where if I went to bat for something important for that group, they made it happen for me every single time. Like the tuition classification algorithm that we had to build, it was obvious about 2 months in that the product wasn't designed to do what Georgia wanted it to do, because it's literally, I don't know how many steps of logic. Anyway, the other thing is I think you have to set boundaries with, in my case, when you're managing a big project and you're implementing multiple campuses, you have to kind of be the boundary between the campus and the vendor. And that goes back to advocacy, but it's a little different. That boundary can be sometimes, no, you're going to invite me because I'm going to be in the room and I'm going to advocate for that campus. So we really have enjoyed our relationship with the Element team, and they've been super responsive, and that's not always the case. I can think of a SIS vendor that is just unreal to deal with. And I don't want to, I want to finish with this one thought. It's got to be a partnership between the campus, and in my case, the system office and the vendor. And we got that with Element. We got that. So
I just want to say one thing, because I am in the role of CIO no with the vendor. Let me be very clear, because we have other people that are working directly with the vendor. So the other thing I will say to you is, if it's not working because it's costing a lot of money and it's having impact on your community and your students, you need to sever it.
Absolutely. And I was fortunate enough to know Susan in previous roles, so it's great to carry those over. I didn't know Lynn before, but we knew a lot of the same people, so that helps. And, you know, my bestie Kathy up here, those vendors like carrying those relationships from people to people too, because you spend a lot of your day in work, and it's better to spend it with people that you enjoy working with too.
absolutely.
And this one's just funny because in this land of AI, we're going to skip ahead a little bit. What's the biggest integration myth you want to bust? So I like the magic wand myth, because integrations aren't easy. You can't wave a magic wand and have it happen. So what's a myth that you would like to bust?
It will not work the first time. It will not work the first time. And it's never true that it's going to work the first time. It might work the second time or the third or the fourth, but that's the biggest myth. Everybody thinks you're just going to sign on the line and then it's all going to work. Ain't going to happen. Ain't happening.
I would say it's not one and done. Once the integration works and you've implemented, the product changes, the environment changes, security compliance changes, and your business needs change. So it's an evolving process. So breathe.
Yes. And it's a good one to end on. What piece of advice would you give your past self at the start of your IT journey, your integration journey, the start of yourself working?
The one I thought about is, I do run, so it's not a marathon. It is a marathon, it's not a sprint. Okay, it's going to take time, especially for large integrations. It's an iterative process. And I would say there needs to be an acceptance from IT, what your functional leads bring to the table, and from your functional side, what IT brings. So again, it's that relationship that has to be formed for this to work. One can't do it and the other can't. I mean, they have to be together.
Well, just short and sweet, I would have said to myself, you will be able to learn this. You absolutely will. You will lead technology. You will. You don't have to code to lead. And you will also lead lots of chaos. So trust yourself in the process. That's what I would have told myself at the start of my IT journey, because I had a lot of fear. But in the end, it all worked out, and you have to have that level of trust.
Absolutely. We do have a QR code to a brand new pre-integration readiness checklist that just went live in our integration guide this morning. So I predicted what you guys were going to pick from that poll, so that was great. So grab that. It's also in our integration guide, and we do have a couple minutes for questions.
Round of applause first for the
Thank you all so much. I'm also starving and ready for some pound cake. I can attest to the deliciousness of the pound cake Lynn has made for the team. It was very, very good. Lunch is after this, but I do want to open up and ask if y'all have any questions. How many of you are going through an API integration or thinking about an API integration? Yeah, there's a lot in the room. It's one of the things that makes Element a little bit different from some of the other CRMs or digital workforce platforms that y'all have encountered. Any questions for our esteemed panelists? Oh yes, one down here, go ahead. I'll give you the mic. Nobody told me I would be running a marathon, Dr. Bowen. Yeah.
So don't sprint.
Yeah, right, I know.
She said don't sprint, yes. Most of the integration conversation seemed to revolve around a lot of the SIS material or something directly bolted on to the SIS, degree works and things of that nature. I'm wondering what other third-party integrations you guys have worked with and where the hurdles from those different types of things that you have had trying to make those integrations and working those different business processes in.
Great question.
I would say to you that most anything that attaches to the ERP, whether that's how you process payment, how you do your financial aid with the bookstore, what you're doing with your LMS. I would say to you the difference, I would say, than an Element integration or maybe something you've done with Ellucian for like DegreeWorks is very transactional because you're trying to get just for this to work so that the students could buy their book. The one card integration. So with those vendors, it's a little bit different, I think. And they've done it a lot of times, and they've done it with the systems you're on. Versus when you're doing, we did a lot of new beta testing with Element, so that was a little bit different process because we were testing and trying to see what worked and didn't work. But we knew we were in a longer relationship. When you work with some of those smaller companies, and I mean, we also have had a couple instances of other CRMs on campus at Durham Tech, whether it was Salesforce or whatever, just used in pockets, it becomes very transactional. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think you just need to recognize that. And that's where the vendor is coming from.
So Axiom has been our middleman for decades, and we're undergoing a huge cloud readiness project. So to your question about other companies, is it MuleSoft? Yeah, so MuleSoft, but we, campuses use all kinds of little tools for this and for that. But our primary system level tool has been Axiom, and there was a lot of push from campuses to use Axiom and not use Ethos, but because the USG wants to be cloud ready, the decision was made.
Awesome, thank you, great question. That's time for this session. One more round of applause for our panelists. Thank you.